what is needed for the country. Because I see social workers, because just now mentioned about the cases of the elderly and also people with disabilities, that what happened, the sad stories in the community. you know in Malaysia, we all relying on JKM, which is a federal government service, federal central government service. I would like to see more social workers actually working in the community at the local authority, local level, because this is where easier for the community to access. Okay, so because federal office, you imagine, yeah, I'm just putting in so that you can understand, yeah. JKM, okay, they have JKM office in every district, but it's not enough. You see, you have a district of 1 million, 2 million population. Okay, you just simply cannot, cater to the needs, of the growing population. So that is where we have to look at how to develop, encourage or stimulate, or even subsidizing, or funding, uh, you know services through the non-profit organizations to employ social workers. So these are the things that the government has to also, and all the other stakeholders have to look at. Yeah. So I think I, I basically answered the three questions.
Nazrin, would you like to add some? Yeah.
Yeah, so just to add on, in terms of the misunderstanding and challenges. So social workers, they are not just bounded or limited by the protocol or SOP in the organization, but also in the whole system. Like we can have a social worker that take the clients to the police to make a report or something, but if the system, but then when you go to the police, then police say something else pula, macam, okay, like go home or something, it's a small matter and this kind of thing. So it's like a larger system, right? And also the other thing also that, for example, in WAO, we have our own limitation, right? In terms like who we can take to the shelter, for example, and the limited capacity of our shelter and our safe houses. So it's not like our social worker can solve everything. So, and because like for WO, we receive calls for Malaysian, from local Malaysian, from foreigners, from refugees. So there are certain things that, even for example in refugee cases, maybe if like say there's a domestic violence instances that refugee women face, it's not easy to just tell them that, okay, make a police report, even though actually they have the avenue to make a police report, because under our Domestic Violence Act, it does cover Malaysian and also non-Malaysian, right? So they can go to police station, but it's not easy for these women to actually just make decision. Okay, I'll go police station, because we need to understand also all the risks that she's going to be taking. And is it so for social workers, they also need to calculate all these things, right? They need to give the options. Again, at the end of the day, like what Dr. Teo rightly mentioned, we don't make decision for the clients. It's they themselves that have to make that decisions. We give them the options. Okay, that's option A that you can take, ABC. Option B or option C, and we need to give all the information so that the clients can make informed decision. And also the other things also is like, this is what I hear also from my social worker colleague, that see, they are staff in the organization, that they also have certain working hours, but in the social worker situation, social worker role, somehow that is blurred, because clients would call them at
No
12
such thing as
a.m. or
work-life balance, right,
correct,
Nazrin?
correct. It's so difficult for them, right? Because then if they don't answer, then the clients may call the helpline again and say, "Oh, my social worker didn't answer, and I need to speak to the social worker." So this, I think, this is like quite complicated and challenging for them as well, because they obviously cannot be answering everything that the social worker, the clients ask, because like immediate response may not be possible, even though the clients may expect that, so actually to kind of like handle it, because obviously clients who's like in trauma, they may have, they are going through so many things in their life, in their head, so they actually rely on the social workers and everything. But as I think everyone also said, we also need to look at social workers as a person, as a human with their own life and everything. So like in WHO, we actually have a mandatory protocol for our social worker to go for debriefing at least 4 times a year or more if they need lah. We encourage them, but memang mandatory 4 times a year, because this one also sometimes we have to push, because social workers, they are just in their work and they just busy doing their work, and then we have to remind, no, you need to go for debriefing. Have you gone for your debriefing? Because they just doing the work and they not think about their own well-being. And that's why the burnout is real. Like in the organization, the burnout is real. And sometimes it comes to the point that where, they're not able, they just need to leave because they cannot like take on anymore. So I feel that by having the bill, yes, that definitely it can kind of like put a mechanism on how we can support social worker better. And by social workers actually having a regulatory body, they also can have like maybe a support group. They can also go for training occasionally, regularly, on how do they manage certain things and stuff. Because organization, yeah, maybe we can assist them definitely. Like for example, if like say the apa tu yang pasal kena saman, sue and everything, in our situation obviously they will sue WHO lah, not sue the staff itself, because we have this happen as well to WHO, where the family of the clients and everything, file a suit against the organization and all that kind of thing. But yes, I think it's important for them to have this body that can like assist them. And then the questions about how ideally it can encourage. Yeah, I mean, I am all for hiring qualified social workers, because I
Yeah.
think it will change, or it will improve, not change, improve the quality of the services that we can deliver our clients, and also that by having a qualified social worker, because at the moment, we not all our social workers are have a degree in social work. They may have a degree in psychology, mostly psychology, and then got like a few social work. But so when they come to WHO, definitely they need to be trained, right? So that would take more time being trained and and then they have to do the shadow, like the senior social worker will shadow the new social worker and all that kind of thing. But I feel that maybe if we have this bill, a professional bill where all social workers need to be qualified, they will come in already with these advantages of knowing how they can handle cases and everything. So it will also be easier for us lah, in the organization to kind of like, okay, you guys are qualified, you know what you're
Standardized, and
doing.
it's also a more structured process, right, Nazrin, on how the whole entire system and the ecosystem is meant to support itself. Nazrin,
Definitely.
if I may, I think you brought up some really important points. I know that Dr. Teo said that social workers are not magicians, but they're definitely superheroes in our eyes because of the number
Definitely.
of things that happen, and sometimes very unforgiving. I think, Nazrin, you brought up a very important point, right? For someone who's going through trauma or someone who's going through a crisis, that social worker, you wish they were at your speed dial any moment, any time of day. But we often forget that, like doctors, right? You might be the patient number 3,786, but for the patient, you are the doctor. So the same thing for somebody who's going through a traumatic instance or in need. Desperation can lead us to be quite impatient with the people who are actually trying to help us sometimes. And I think thanks for that. It's definitely something that we need to be more mindful of. You brought up something really important, and this was about burnout. And how do we help protect our social workers? And of course, YB Wong Chen mentioned this in the past. Dr. Chiu also mentioned this. When we do have a more structured process, it's not only looking at the standardization and the professionalization of the industry and the service provision, but also safety nets and protections for the people who are actually doing this so that they can give the best care and have the protection that they need to be able to tap out when they need to. Now, we've got two questions that are coming in from Greg as well as from Imam, and I don't want to miss that. I know we've got 7 minutes to the clock before noon. So, Greg and Imam, do you want to raise the questions, or do you not mind if I read this out for you and I seek the assistance from the panelists to give us a punchy answer so that we can get through all the important points? So, Iman Mutakin from Bernard News and Greg, do you want to unmute or do you want me to read your questions for you? Going once?
Yeah, perhaps.
Going
Hi,
twice?
hi. Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
go.
hi, Iman from Bernard News here. Okay, so just I mean a last one lah. Yeah, in terms of like child protection in Malaysia, we seen case like GISB, over like 500 children were living in squalid condition, and on top of like refugee children as well. So for Saskia, for UNICEF, do you think like is Malaysia meeting UNICEF standard when it comes to like protection? And also like how does UNICEF assess the role of like local authorities, I mean the police and also welfare departments in preventing these cases? Yeah, thank you.
Thank
you.
And he's talking about, how might legislation make a difference to all this? Can you also share, because you said earlier that there was a study that was made, a comparative analysis of other countries. And I think it would be remiss if we don't ask UNICEF to touch upon some of the other countries that you've seen. I know you've done a study on the Philippines, how that has worked for them. So could you kind of weave that answer into Iman's questions as well?
Within a few minutes that we have left, right? A complex question. I mean, UNICEF does global benchmarking in terms of what does a strong, what we call a mature child protection system look like. So Malaysia is somewhere in the upper half at the moment, and we look at various aspects. So social work is one aspect, right? Interagency cooperation, the funding, these all go into this, evaluation of what a child protection system looks like. Look, no country in the world can completely prevent child abuse and neglect, because it's a reality of our societies that we live in. But we can reduce the amount. We can have early intervention services in place, and we can make sure that those that have experienced violence and abuse get the services that they need, professional services that they need, right? I think, just to give a very concrete example, because you also, I think, to touch on what Greg was asking about in terms of the recent scandal, right? I think it's what YB Wong Chen was saying earlier. It's a time for profound reform. And we've seen in so many countries around the world where there was increased investment into child protection. This came on the back of a big scandal like we're seeing in Malaysia, unfortunately, at the moment right now. So we need to be really forward-looking and seize the moment. To give you an example how social workers could make a difference. So in Malaysia, what we know is that there are thousands of children who live in institutions, whether we call them orphanages or welfare homes. The majority of those institutions are not registered and therefore not regulated, not monitored. And let me be clear, the majority of children in institutions, whether in Malaysia or if you look at any other country that has a large unregulated amount of institutions, are not orphans. It's families that have to make heartbreaking decisions to send their children to these institutions for other reasons. It's not that they're orphans or that there's no one in the family to care for them. So imagine a Malaysia where we have a really strong professional social workforce, where we have social workers who could work with families early on So, for example, a family that experiences an economic crisis, that falls into poverty, connect them to the right services so they don't have to separate from one or some of their children and have to make this heart-wrenching decision. Or a family that cares for a child with disability. We know that a lot of children with disabilities end up in institutional care, where the families would be ready to care for them if they would be connected to the right services and would have the right support. So all of this, like if we have, and it links back to the bill, it links to everything we talked about today. If we have the bill, if we have investment in social work, we can do so much more in terms of preventing and strengthening families before something happens. And really also reduce the amount of children that find themselves in institutions. So yes, I think it's time to seize the moment. I think this scandal has revealed one of the many aspects of what can happen to children. But it's really time for comprehensive reform, care reform, and the social work bill is part of this, is part and parcel of this.
Expertly done, Saskia. Thanks for that. Now, with 1 minute to spare, and as we draw this to a close, I don't want to have our friends from media get off easy, right? So the question now is, we're going to turn tables on its head. I'm asking the question to everyone here on the panel. As we move ahead, and we've mentioned this several times, it takes a whole community to be involved in this. So finally, what role can communities play, including key members of the community like the media? What can we do to support the social work profession bill better and advocate for the bill to happen when it needs to happen? What do we need to do and how can we get on board? So I'll go to YB and then to Dr. Teo and then to Nazrin and then to Saskia in one sentence each. Over to you, YB.
One sentence? Okay. Take this upcoming budget session, which lasts until December 15. Come and lobby, come and push through the women ministry and also to the PSSC on women, and I think we'll get the results. Thank you.
Dr. Teo.
One sentence is quite difficult for a lecturer.
I know YB is going to set the standard high, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think keep on writing about what social workers do. Yeah. Give a clear and correct picture of what social workers, because a lot of people are still confused about who is a social worker and who is a volunteer. Okay, because when you look at everybody can be a social worker or volunteers, and then why bother to have this bill? Yeah. And why bother to regulate volunteers? Actually, it's not about regulating volunteers, regulating a professional groups that they are tasked to do a very complex cases. Okay, so I will urge the media to have more stories. Go and interview social workers, get stories and get the public to understand about social work.
Wonderful. Nazrin.
Okay, I try with one sentence. Okay, so I think in essence, this social work profession act, it will provide a very much needed framework that can strengthens the capacity of social workers to protect and enhance welfare of women, children, senior citizens, especially those in care centers or shelters, homes, by ensuring a high standard of practice across the board.
Yeah. And of course, last but not least, Saskia.
Yeah, I think everything has been said. Keep on highlighting the positive impact of social workers on individuals here in Malaysia.
Wonderful. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, do not run away just yet. Let's have our cameras on so we can take a group shot of everyone in the room. Now, while you do that, let me do a quick recap of what we discussed today. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Di awal pagi sampailah tengah hari, we spoke about everything from macro overview of the need, from not only understanding who exactly are social workers, what they do, How are they different from charity workers and volunteers? We set the stage on understanding all the way from Hanoi Declaration to the laws and the norms that are in our country that help protect and move the social work protection industry and field in the country. And then we had Dr. Teo sharing what is it when we talk about quality, capacity, setting standards that need to be in place from the fact that the Malaysian Association of Social Workers have been around for decades now, all the way to the challenges that we have in terms of understanding malpractice, providing safety nets, etc. Nazrin then gave a deep dive on what is it to be looking at not just children, but a whole community approach in the challenges that we look at. That social workers are not just there at the afterthought of a crisis, but how do we look at preventing and preempting potential differences and vulnerabilities from happening again, all the way to reintegrating those that are in need of care back into society. And she spoke about linkages. Then we talk about YB Wong Chen's interjection on the need for political will, Madani government's Ihsan's mandate, as well as legislation. What are some of the things that we should be looking at in light of the need for our country moving into a heightened care economy need? He also spoke about the fact that the budget really isn't that big. If we put our heads together, we would be able to get further, talking about investing for the future and the loss of not only efficiency and productivity for the country if we do not do this right. Now, thank you everyone for the questions that you gave from the media. And last but not least, let's take charge. YB Wong Chen said, take charge. The budget lobbying that's happening, please, mari kita bersama push this forward. Let's help get the news out. So as Dr. Teo said, we need more iman. We need to have more benar news about the news on social workers to rectify some of these misconceptions. Let's provide the framework that we need so that we maintain that high quality and standard so all Malaysians can benefit. And of course, as Saskia mentioned, let's seize the moment. All right, so therefore, let's seize the moment and take a group photo. Everybody give us your best smile. Siapa yang di rantau yang tengah buat screen cap ni? All right, 3, 2, 1, senyum. Okay, I don't know who's taking the picture. So just like freeze and hold that smile. 3, 2, 1. One more time. Big cheesy grins, everybody. Smile. And thank you. With that, on behalf of our friends from UNICEF and MASW, saya menyusun jari 10 jika ada terkasar bahasa dan tersusur kata. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have an amazing Thursday. And don't forget, Malaysians, be safe and stay kind. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.